Hi everyone, a few movies for you. Now, later this year, Andrew Garfield is going to be starring alongside Florence Pugh in a new film for director John Crowley, the director of Brooklyn. And that film is going to be We Live in Time. But Andrew Garfield made his screen debut in a film for John Crowley back in 2007, and that's this one, Boy A. A really terrific performance from Garfield in this, playing a young man who is quietly released back into society after having been in jail for a crime that he committed as a child. Now, anyone my age perhaps will be familiar with a true life event that happened back in the UK, a very tragic one. Now, this film isn't directly related to that, but is possibly inspired by it. But yeah, really sensitively handled drama this. Terrific performances also from Peter Mullen and Katie Lyons in this. But yeah, absolutely a phenomenal debut here for Andrew Garfield. Terrific drama. Shock from 1946 is a Fox film noir directed by Albert Werker and starring Vincent Price. This concerns an emotionally fragile woman who's waiting in a hotel room for the return of her husband from the war. And whilst she's waiting there, she witnesses a murder from her hotel room and literally is traumatized to the spot, frozen in her chair. The hotel staff call in the local psychiatrist, who is, unfortunately, none other than the murderer, Vincent Price. And then this becomes a drama in which he tries to institutionalize her and cover up the murder. This is probably one of the weaker films, I think, in the Fox Film Noir series, because the story does struggle to keep itself going and it gets increasingly more ludicrous. But when is it not fun to see Vincent Price? Tokyo Sonata from 2008, directed by Kiyoshi Kurosawa. Excellent one this, dramatic, at times funny, and quite touching as well. But yeah, this concerns a family, a husband, a wife and two sons, and really most of the drama centres on the husband who has lost his job but continues to get ready for work and go out as if he's going to work, so keeping it all secret from his family. But yeah, he's not at the same time noticing the other issues that are going on within his family. So yeah, there's lots of fractured lives here and different kind of dramas that are being played out. But yeah, really good commentary, I suppose, on the nature of family and the lies that we tell each other. But yeah, great one. The Horsemen is a really cold-hearted and brutal drama directed by John Frankenheimer and starring Omar Sharif and Jack Palance. It's set in Afghanistan and it's a very male tale, this, of strength, honour, reputation and integrity. But yeah, incredibly cold-hearted. But it focuses on the sport of buzkashi, which is an Afghan sport, a very traditional sport there in Afghanistan, and quite an unusual one. It involves very experienced horsemen with whips, all prepared to beat each other with those whips as they race after the carcass of a headless goat and try and keep hold of it. Incredibly difficult sport this, and John Frankenheimer films these sportsmanship scenes with incredible skill. It really is intense to watch. There is quite a bit of animal cruelty in this, not just in the horse scenes, but there are other sequences involving camels and rams as well. So yeah, quite a vicious film this, but yeah, really interesting one. And definitely in terms of John Frankenheimer films, pair this up with Grand Prix and also the Gypsy Moths. So Grand Prix was about race car driving and the Gypsy Moths about skydiving. So as a trilogy, these are really intense dramas, cold-hearted dramas about male determination to pursue things to the death. In 1991 at the cinema, Jodie Foster was hunting down a serial killer as Clarice Starling in The Silence of the Lambs. But meanwhile, on TV, on British TV at least, we had Helen Mirren in a really career-defining role as DCI Jane Tennyson in this first series of Prime Suspect, written by Linda LaPlante. A really fantastic performance from Helen Mirren in this. Quite a gritty role here as this DCI who really has to prove herself against her colleagues whilst investigating a murder. Such a strong performance. And this series had such an incredible cast in it as well. Just in this series 1, we have the screen debut of Ralph Fiennes. This is 3 years before he got his screen breakout role, if you like, in Schindler's List. But yeah, also in the cast here we've got Tom Wilkinson, Tom Bell, Craig Fairbrass, and Zoe Wanamaker. But yeah, terrific drama this one, Prime Suspect. I just got the box set of this and I'm really enjoying going through these again. Haunted from 1995, executive produced by Francis Ford Coppola and directed by Lewis Gilbert. This is adapted from a novel by James Herbert. I used to read quite a lot of James Herbert when I was younger, novels such as Rats and Lair. Most of his horror books tended to involve a bit of sex in them as well, and that's the case here. We've actually got a young Kate Beckinsale in this film. And we get to see quite a bit of her, or at least her body double. But yeah, Aidan Quinn in this one, investigating a haunting at a country manor. This also co-stars Anthony Andrews, not a great performance from him, but also veteran actors such as John Gielgud and Anna Massey. So this one's quaintly old-fashioned, I would say, but not particularly scary nor thrilling. It is a little bit slow in places and probably won't really appeal to modern audiences. But yeah, not too bad though. 10 Little Indians from 1965. This is an Agatha Christie adaptation, one of several. This also has been done as And Then There Were None. It involves 10 people being invited to a mountaintop castle, and then when they're there, they then have to work out who is the murderer, as one by one they each start to disappear. So there's no investigator in this, such as a Marple or Poirot. It is just the 10 invitees themselves, so they have to figure things out. Yeah, this is quite a fun one. It is a little bit silly, I would say, but yeah, a good cast that includes Shirley Eaton, the woman that was covered in gold in Goldfinger, Leo Jen, Wilfrid Hyde-White, Stanley Holloway, and Dennis Price. Yeah, fun. The Cutter from 2006, a pretty poorly made film, this one, and it's the last leading man role, if you like, for Chuck Norris, although he has had a few screen appearances since then. But yeah, this one is a disaster. It just looks horrible, and there's really not much to it. There's perhaps just 2 mediocre fight scenes and 1 mediocre car chase in it. I'll give it a little bit of credit, I suppose, for having some semblance of a story involving Nazi war crimes and a Auschwitz survivor, but really no, there's nothing here to sort of latch onto or care about. Joanna Pacula stars in this, as well as Tracy Scoggins, but yeah, this one is for Chuck Norris completists only. Everyone else avoid. The Quick and the Dead. No, not the Sam Raimi one with Leonardo DiCaprio. This is a 1987 TV western adapted from a Louis L'Amour novel, and it stars Sam Elliott, Tom Conti and Kate Capshaw. Set in 1876 Wyoming, it involves Conti and Capshaw in their horse and wagon, looking for a place to settle and encountering a fair number of dangers along the way. But fear not, because there's rugged Sam Elliott on hand to protect them and also try and win the heart of Kate Capshaw. Now, this is nothing too spectacular in terms of storytelling, but it is enjoyable enough. Sam Elliott is really good in this. Unusual to see Tom Conti, and Kate Capshaw, I have to say, probably the most radiant she's looked on film. I mean, she's been obviously in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and Black Rain, but yeah, she's probably at her most beautiful in this film, I would say. Sorry, Wrong Number, dramatic thriller from 1948 with an Oscar-nominated performance for Barbara Stanwyck and co-starring Burt Lancaster, an early role for him. Directed by Anatole Litvak and adapted from a radio play by Lucille Fletcher. This concerns a woman in bed at home, waiting for her husband to return, and when she calls his office, she gets a crossed line and hears what seems to be a murder plot developing. So yeah, she then has to try and get the involvement of the phone operator and the police and anyone else who will listen to foil this plot. And we then get a whole bunch of flashbacks as well to get more of a backstory on this one and her relationship with Burt Lancaster. Now, the interesting thing with this is actually on YouTube, and maybe it's available elsewhere as well, there is the suspense radio play. And this was a a series of radio plays that ran for over 900 episodes from 1942. But you can go and find the actual original radio play. It's only half an hour long. Have a listen to that, because really that radio play just concerns the woman being on the phone talking to a phone operator and the police, whereas the film really expands things and gives things much more of a backstory, etc. So I think it's a great example of seeing what film needs to do to be able to make a story more cinematic. But yeah, see which you prefer. Do you enjoy the film more than the radio play? Resurrection from 1980. This is directed by Daniel Petrie, and it stars Ellen Burstyn and an early role for Sam Shepard. This was just before he went on to do Terrence Malick's Days of Heaven. But yeah, interesting one this. Ellen Burstyn plays a character who has a tragic car accident and actually experiences a clinical death. But she comes back to life, but with seemingly the powers to heal people. And this then becomes a questionable thing about what exact powers does she have and whether they are God-given powers, perhaps. Yeah, interesting one. It does go a bit off the rails in the final act with something that Sam Shepard does, which is quite ludicrous. But up until then, yeah, a really interesting one. And there is a great scene for the excellent Richard Farnsworth, who I talked about recently in relation to The Grey Fox. But yeah, he has a fantastic scene as a gas station attendant, and it also involves a two-headed snake as well. But yeah, wish we'd seen more of him in the film. He's really good. But yeah, interesting film, this one. Okay, please let me know your comments on any of those movies, any that you've seen, any that you want to see. Please join me again for some more videos. I hope to see you. Thanks very much for joining me on this one. All the best. Bye-bye.